Good morning, rather good afternoon from Sacred Space at Titania's Realm. The time is 1:11 p.m. Make a wish to your angels if you're so inclined. And it's the 11th of January 2026, which is also 111 plus a 10 makes a 1. Potent. I've got all the angel numbers lined up in synchronicity. 1, 1, 1 for January 2026 makes 10, which is another 1. So 11, 11, and the time 1:11. So yeah, how's that for the space-time coordination with the Gregorian calendar? Because time is relative to where in the earth you are, and on another part of the planet it's a whole different time, but the date remains the same if you've moved over into our time zone. So on that note, Goddess, Creator of all that is, was, and ever shall be, bless us all with peace, abundance, prosperity, joy and delight, truest, greatest lovers, real loves, family, friends, community, tribe, however that manifestation of love, light and truth finds us. Some of us have many surrounding us, and some of us, like myself, are quite alone, physically speaking, but I'm never really alone, as the angel numbers reminded me so potently just now. And of course I've got my birdie boys and my little goldfish in my front garden, so there are other life forms that rely on me here in Sacred Space, Titania's Realm. And then we have the beautiful wild birds that come. I've just realised I haven't filled up the turkey's food. He was looking at me this morning too to let me know, but he's gone off. But if he comes back, I'll put some more food out for him. Actually, maybe I should do that now, because either way we're going to have to break up the reading, aren't we? Yes, just bear with me. I'm just going to top up his food. Right you are, people of Earth, back in the room, or should I say back in the garden. Yes, because it's not fair to, get them accustomed to having a food source and then for it to suddenly be withheld just because I hadn't realised that it was all gone. And one must not be lazy, people of Earth. You make a commitment to your wild children in all forms, then you need to follow through and everything, and everyone likes a good feed. I know I do. Don't like being left hungry, or don't like being neglected, abandoned or abused either, and had a long life history of that too, so I certainly won't be the one to do the same to the little wild ones who can't spec up for themselves and rely on that extra bit of food. I mean, they don't come here just for that, because they eat out in the wild as well, but it just sort of supplements them a bit. I suspect it's all gone though, because probably I left it out last night. Usually I put it away for the night, because the possums come and eat it all too. And I don't resent feeding the possums, but you know, it's actually meant for the birds. So I'm not sure how much bird seed is actually good for possums, but I'm fairly certain that's who polishes off what the birds haven't eaten the day before, if I forget to put the food away. Even the little bowl that I have on top for the crows to come and get up higher on the potting cabinet, that's completely emptied out too. So they had a good feed last night, all of them. Well, happy days. It's good to be fed, people of Earth, from a benevolent, loving source field without parasitical attachments or having people bleed you dry just out of envy and maliciousness and spite, because I won't feed those types. Just saying. They can bloody well starve of my energy now. So, here we go, people of Earth. Feels like we're going to get a storm, but there's nothing forecast for today. But, well, bombs tend to bomb, don't they? Trust the science. But yes, I can hear vague rumbling in the distance. I don't know if that's actually other sounds I'm picking up on. Anyway, here we go, people of Earth. We've settled down. The birdies are preening. I'm breathing. Had a very bad night. My CPAP mask, not the mask, but the machine turned itself off twice. There were no power outages because I checked by turning my light on. So it was a bit weird that my ResMed is turning itself off, because I nearly died on the 4th of July 2024 when I'd nearly started on it, because I had forgotten to turn the machine on and I inhaled too much of my own carbon dioxide. So I thought that's interesting, since I've started incorporating protection prayers about six or 7 days ago. 6 days ago, that should start playing up or becoming faulty. The machine's only, a year and a half old, and I think it's under warranty for 2 to 5 years. I'm not sure. I'm going to have to check, because if it keeps turning itself off like that, I'm going to have to buy another one, and they're expensive, and that one was gifted to me. I don't want to have to ask for another one, but without it, I've got used to having it to help me breathe in the night, and even then my breathing still stops. Last night was 1.1 times an hour, which was better than the night before, which was 3.6 or something ridiculous. Anyway, I haven't healed with my sleep apnea, but then I haven't healed from many other things, so I just soldier on, people of Earth. Soldier on, one day at a time, one moment at a time, one breath at a time. But I'm hoping I don't need another ResMed machine. So what I've done, because sometimes I think it just gets overloaded, or the computer in it, I've completely switched it off, at the power socket, turned it off, given it a day without any power, and I'll see how it goes when I power it back up tonight. Hopefully it will be okay. If not, I'm going to need to buy another one and Money, 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 which I don't really have. I'm so sick of struggling all the time. So very sick of it, and so very sick of people that I thought were friends turning vicious and toxic just because I wouldn't get lured into an affair and all that savagery, and then gaslighting me, telling me I imagined the whole thing. No, darling, I've got it all written down and documented. I diarise everything. So I know I wasn't crazy, you were imagining it. So that's on you plural. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's really in the broad scheme of things, and in a few years I won't even remember their names by choice more than lack of memory, you understand. Things eventually just seep out, and life goes on, and I'll find a new way of existing in this world alone. And it takes a fair bit of courage to make that determination that you have to exist alone, but I've had plenty of practice at it over the last 31 years. It's not the first time that the music scene's turned rancid on me. The last time was in 2015, which was such a shock and so beyond awful. I did attempt suicide, but I'm stronger now, and I've realised the kinds of people that would push you with bullying and othering and awfulness to your own suicide are not your people. Never were, never are, never will be. So I've made up my mind. I'll carry on doing what I do, and if I feel like it, I'll go dancing somewhere, and I'll never let the bastards grind me down. And they can go on with their lives, living their best lives, and I'll go on living mine. And the best revenge, people of Earth, is happiness, and knowing that you were honourable and maintained your integrity and stayed classy, and let the trash take themselves out, people of Earth. They always do eventually. They always turn on themselves. Narcissists especially, when they don't have any enablers or flying monkeys or adoring public to aggrandise their rut and their evil, they turn it on themselves. All their brains turn to mush, like what happened with my mother, which was not pleasant to watch actually. Although she had been evil to me most of my life, she was still my birth mother, and there was a measure of love still there that was confused and tainted and contaminated, but I'm free of her too. 16 years on the 7th of March she's been dead. And do you know how wonderful, did you hear me take a breath? I'm free of her. It took a lot to get my freedom from her. She was still clawing at my spirit with the will dispute 2.5 years after her death, with savagery. And it really wasn't until after the suicide attempt in 2015, which was, 5 years and a few months later, that I was finally free of her. It's funny how the gods take me to the very brink between life and death to heal certain things and bring me back into my full power and remind me that I have a right to exist on this planet, and that I'm as deserving as any other man, woman or child of a happy, loving, peaceful life, and surrounded by good people and people who are genuine and authentic and caring, who have my back, my front and my sides, just like the real bogus here back in history. and that I can trust to be there for me. It's astonishing, people of Earth. Astonishing. Little Beau's looking at me like, yes it is, Mama T. It's astonishing. He doesn't know what that word means, but he's looking all excited and happy to be out in the garden. You happy boy? You're a happy boy. Yes, Kermie's a happy boy too. That stupid toy I put in the way of their food is annoying him. Sorry, Kermie, didn't know where else to put it. Perhaps I'll swap that bell over with that, swap positions. It makes it hard for him to access his food. Well, his fruit and vegetables anyway. Oh, but he'll work it out. He's a clever bird. Aren't you, Kermie? You're very intelligent. Yeah, he's worked it out. Just took a bit of manoeuvring. Right, people of Earth, let us begin with chapter 31, and this will be a long chapter. I think I established that yesterday. So, and as I move in and out of states and start picking up on energies and what have you, may or may not happen, just bear with me. You'll get the story in the end, even though there's often a bit of segueing and flobbering and wavering. I get there in the end. Corvus, prefect of the Quinta Gallorum, temporarily assigned to the professor, where did I get professor from? To the governor's personal guard, celebrated midsummer's dawn, becalmed on the deck of a wide-waisted cargo sloop with a single-bellied sail that waddled through the waves as a duck through a farm pond, and left all but the most sea-hardened men vomiting in their bunks. I wonder why they were vomiting, because when you're becalmed it means there's no wind, therefore you wouldn't think it would be all that wavy. My grandfather, Anton Petula, used to whistle the winds to release his fellow shipmates from being becalmed for too long out at sea. It was a very much valued, begged for gift that he had. Well, anyway, I guess in Roman times the ships were buffeted a lot more by not being able to move through the sea at their own volition. Trying to work it out, people of Earth. It's just me trying to work things out. But I get there in the end. I always do. Takes me a while sometimes. Corvus had not thought of himself as particularly sea-hardened, but clearly was more so than those who travelled with him. He stood wide-legged on the aft deck with the steersman and the ship's master, and lifted a goblet of well-watered wine to the bleeding edge of the sun. He had never been a priest or functionary in any of Rome's cults, but he spoke a few words to Jupiter, who seemed the most reasonable of the gods. Are you kidding? Jupiter is Zeus, is it not? Zeus? Reasonable? Oh well, whatever makes you get through your day. and then spilled some of the wine into the green-grey sea for Neptune, also known as Poseidon, that they might perhaps seize some wind shortly and come safely back to shore at a place where neither tides nor currents nor hidden rocks might kill them. Tangaroa, my cousin's ancestors are yelling out. Yes, Tangaroa. Last, in Alexandrian, which neither the master nor the steersman understood, he spoke aloud the care of his heart to the listening spirits of those who were closest to him, as he had done at every winter and summer solstice since he first came into the legions. The ritual calmed him, as it had always done, and made the insanity of what they were doing seem less. Taken in the right light, the venture could seem to be heroic, and doubtless would be made to seem so afterwards in the Senate and baths of Rome by men who enjoyed listening to the deaths of others and considered the search for glory and displays of courage to be entirely admirable in anyone other than themselves. Corvus gave a last sluice of wine to the water and offered the goblet two-handed to the steersman, who drank, and passed it to the master, who drank and handed it back in like manner to Corvus, so that they each shared the mid-year bounty with the gods. Which reminds me, I need to buy another bottle of Jack Daniels and continue with my offerings to the voodoo god Papa Legba. Not that I worship him as a supreme being, don't get me wrong, but I built a relationship with that energy, and I need to continue with the offerings out of a mark of respect and responsibility. You cannot ask favour of the gods like with the birds and then withhold the offerings. But the only reason I haven't done it is I've been a bit, tight with money, and I need to also reinstate that I was doing regularly actually, and it was very beneficial and kind of healing, my offerings to the land and earth spirits and the ancestors that love us and the four directions. Must bring those practices back, because everything in the cosmos likes to be shown honour and respect and genuine care and humble and honouring and kind ways. But yes, I had just done my protection psalms this morning when I started this video and saw 1:11 and the date being 11th of January. I thought that's a little nod from the multiverse to say, keep doing what you're doing, Tanya. You're on the right path, looking after yourself spiritually, and everything will be okay. The wine was mellow and smelled of autumn and ripe fruit. Corvus let it rest a while on his tongue and swallowed it with the next heave of the deck. Land today? He spoke the words with exaggerated clarity. Nightfall. The ship's master was from the Northlands, a giant of a man with yellow hair and a ring of blue dots tattooed in the weather-red skin round his neck. That's unusual. His Latin was as rudimentary as his Gaulish, and both were greater than his grasp of Britannic tongues. His understanding of light craft and the seas between Hibernia, Gaul and Britannia was exceptional. He was paid a retainer that amounted to more than the annual salary for an entire tent party of legionaries and their centurion, and was worth twice as much for his ability to bring craft to land safely. I wonder where he comes from. It just said Northland, so I'm assuming he's Norse. He must be Norse since he's a giant with yellow hair. But not all Norse had blonde hair. Many were brunettes or redheads. Right. The choice of ship had not been his. Unaccountably, among tribes who were notionally entirely well-disposed towards Rome, there had been no ships free when the governor had needed them. If the Nordic master had not used some of his own gold to keep the crew that he wanted, they would have had no mariners either. The cargo sloop had been bought at breathtaking expense from the son of a man whose life Corvus had once saved. Even then, they had been begged to take it after dark so that he could say it had been stolen. Besides its crew, it carried exactly 16 additional men with one horse each. Corvus chose not to imagine how they were going to ride safely across country to Londinium if no one in the pacified territories was prepared even to sell them a ship. The blonde Northman nodded forward to where the ship's one small boat rested in a sling. "Tonight," he said, "a row, dark, horses swim behind, not seen." He rolled his eyes graphically. "Birds keep dry." The pigeons were Flavius's special care. There were 6, all homed to the flight in this fortress of the 20th, whence a man on a fast horse might ride in less than half a morning to the coast. He cared for them as if they were his children, and had told the Northmen, who seemed to consider them valid rations, that if he ate them, he would eat his testicles immediately after. At the time it had seemed a strangely credible threat. Corvus said, "Tonight," and tried to think what it might take to get the governor and his men upright by nightfall and able to walk, and possibly please all the gods that every one of the horses had come through the voyage safely to ride. "Tonight," the giant grinned. "Wind come soon, boat go fast, waves small, governor less sick." They rowed at night, in the dark before the moon rose, with the oars and the breasting horses making phosphorescent fire in the sea, so that they left a fading trail that marked where they had been. The governor was pale and smelled overly of peppermint oil, which did not entirely cover the smell of vomit. Even so, he was first to step ashore and stood creditably straight with his blade ready, while the others turned the boat round and sent it back with the ship's steersman rowing to wait offshore for their signal, and Corvus and the 2 men he had brought with him led the horses ashore, and worked by feel in the almost dark to find grass with which to dry them off, and gave them handfuls of corn to bring the life back to their eyes and make up for the cold and the dark and the sea. They checked their legs and their flanks and found no cuts or swellings or heat, and Corvus thanked Neptune openly for his gift of horses from the sea. The quarter moon rose in a veiled sky. By its light, 15 men gathered in the dark on the sloping sand around their governor and general, wet to the thighs from the final wade ashore, wrapped tight in winter cloaks against a summer night's cold. 11 of them were of the 14th and 20th legions. They were volunteers, but only insofar as the order had been couched as a request. None of them would have considered refusing. Not all were officers. Like Alexander of Macedon, Suetonius Paulinus had made the effort to know the names and achievements of the men who served under him, and so each was of middle age, a little younger than the governor himself, and each had proved himself outstanding in valour or wit or resource, either in Britannia or in Paulinus's Mauritanian campaigns. What you doing, little Kermit? Happy boys. Happy boy bye. It's another hot day, my boys. Mummy forgot to bring the spritzer bottle out. Do you want a spritz? Do you want a spritz for the schwitz? Only the 2 cavalrymen were not of the governor's direct choosing. Ursus and Flavius came at Corvus's invitation, the one to offer support, the other because it was no longer safe to leave him behind where he could not be watched, and for his precious pigeons, which had kept dry on the row over and might yet save their lives. Last and least of the 15 was a local guide named Gaius, who had lived so long at the fortress of the 20th Legion that he had acquired an accent traceable directly to the gutters of 3 streets that passed between the Mons Aventina and the Tiber in Rome. It had been rumoured on board ship that the governor had promised him citizenship if the war against the tribes was won. More plausible rumour said that the man had 3 sons of whom he was exceeding proud, and that he wanted citizenship for them, more than he wanted life itself. Suetonius Paulinus, governor of all Britannia, stood on the weed and sand of a native shore that should have been friendly, or at least not hostile. Bloody hell, I know that feeling, by all the gods. He wore leather armour because he had no intention of dying if the small boat sank, and his sword was built for use, not for the parade ground. The hilt was covered in boar hide, and the crosspiece, so that no part of it would catch sun or moon and reveal him. His helmet was matte with age. It could have been any legionaries. They were, all the same, grim, hard men who understood exactly what it was they were required to do and how great were the risks. His gaze read them and was content. He said, "From here until we reach and take Vespasian's bridge, we will act as if the natives are the enemy. We will ride fast, we will ride hard. We will avoid confrontation or even meeting with the tribes. But whom we meet, we kill." They travelled hard, but not fast. It was said that the Emperor Tiberius, in the days when he was a general in the Germanies and not yet an emperor, had once ridden 220 miles in a single day. If it were true, he could have ridden the full breadth of Britannia in that same day, except that the roads did not exist, and it would have required him to change horses at the post stations every 20 miles. Suetonius and his 15 men did not have his resources. They rode on trackways and goat paths and were dependent for their directions on the lead of Gaius, who was of the northern Silures and did not know the routes well, and each man had to nurse his horse, knowing that if it foundered, he would have to find another one immediately or be left at the wayside. Being hounded by ants like you wouldn't believe, but rain is on the way. It's forecast to rain tomorrow, actually for the rest of the week, which will be good for the garden, but bad for my lawns, which were just cut. Oh well, gotta ride through whatever the gods bring you, don't you? Like a ship that's becalmed sometimes. But when it's time to blow, I don't mean in a sexual way, but some of you will interpret it that way, people of Earth. Alas and alack. What's my pretty boys doing? My little birdie boys. Oh, you're so clever, Kermie. You're so green, Kermie. Green and yellow under your wings. He's still quilling. He's got little quills up right just above the cere above his beak and just in the little sides under his eyes. Still a quilling baby boy. They met very few natives, and all of them warriors in paint with kill feathers woven into their hair. None of them came close enough to engage, and the risk of ambush or of destroying the horses was too great to follow them. A boy was killed who did not run fast enough and did not know that Flavius, like another before him, was skilled in the using of a throwing knife. Beyond that one inglorious kill, there was nothing but hard days in the saddle, frequent turns back on themselves when a track proved impassable, and only the growing breadth of the river to tell them they were making any progress at all. They came to the first of the deserted trading posts around noon on the 4th day of their travel. It was not an imposing place, a wharf no bigger than the jetty on Mona, lagged about with river weed and the debris of a skirmish. A length of rope swayed in the brown water, caught on the wharf's upstream footing. A tattered piece of woven wool showing green beneath it, the remnant of a child's cloak shed in haste or by accident in flight. 8 merchants' huts were lined along the river up and downstream of the wharf. The nearest was largest, paid for by the river tolls of those wishing to cross to the smaller jetty on the far bank, and the greater trading taxes of those who had bypassed the lower ports and sailed from the open seas through the mouth of the river and up this far. Only one man could be spared at a time for reconnaissance. Corvus drew the white pebble from the helmet and rode down alone to look. He walked his black colt along the water's edge. The horse was not strictly his remount, but he had come through the swim to Mona better than the mare had done, and the Batavian who had ridden him was dead. Corvus did not want to come back and find the man's soul brother had taken his horse as Wergeld. The beast shied at a flapping door hide and again more violently at a sow that had been left in a sty without food or water, and screamed when it saw Corvus coming. Oh, what a cruel thing to do. Leave an animal without food or water. Fucking nasty. Human beings just fucking suck, people of Earth. opened the gateway and let her out, and she charged, ears flapping for the river bank. A scatter of ducks rose in panic, honking so that for a moment there was screaming pandemonium, and Ursus brought half of Paulinus's troop at the gallop with swords drawn, thinking that Corvus was under attack. "There's no one here," Corvus said. He had already checked each hut. The hearts of the fires were cold and damp, but on a day when it was warm enough to ride in shirt sleeves, there was no mould yet on the firestones. He said, "They've been gone more than 2 days, less than 5. Ursus said, "Have they gone across the river or east? They can't have gone west. We'd have met them." Gaius, the Silurian guide, arrived after the first flurry of action. He had some facility as a tracker. He walked the length of the 8 huts and came back to lean on the pigsty. He was taller than any of them, as the Northman had been. He stooped a little, not to seem so. "The boats have gone," he said. "Some of them likely went across, but at least 3 wagons travelled east along the trackway." "How far are we from Vespasian's bridge?" "Half a day's ride. They will be there long ahead of us." "And any others who have gone there?" Corvus swung himself into the saddle. "I hope the magistrates of the port are prepared for 1,000 extra mouths to feed." The magistrates of the settlement that straggled along the northern bank of the Thamesis on either side of Vespasian's bridge were not well prepared. The pandemonium in the circle of huts and trading booths and the central corn exchange matched the chaos of the sow and ducks for noise and to spread over a far wider area. It was a trading port based on a bridge, and the bridge itself was by far the most imposing piece of architecture within it. The place was barely a town. It had a tax room built of oak timbers with weighing scales and a clerk's desk, and another room built in stone for keeping records. It had 2 rows of stables for guest horses and mounts for messengers who might have need to travel to Camulodunum, where the centre of government lay. It had 8 taverns of varying reputation and 2 brothels, one that supplied women and one that supplied everything else that might command money. Of the 100 or so dwellings, the best were merchants' houses, and even those were little more than huts built of wattle with thatched roofs. Cattle and sheep and pigs and goats and 5-toed chickens strutted on the rooftops and pecked in the barnyards. It had hay stores and feed stores and a granary and a string of wells for when the river became swollen with spring flood water and turned too brown to eat. Surely she means drink. Poetic license. The kookaburras are quite chirping away in the background. It had small muddy lanes linking house to house and passage to passage, and slightly wider ones, linking all of these to the great northern roads that swept northwest to Verulamium and up towards Mona and northeast to Camulodunum. It had a ship wallowing at the dock that was being loaded with all that was precious of those who commanded it, ready to flee. It did not have a wall. Paulinus pulled up his group on a wooded slope set well back from the chaos. Excuse me. Oh. They had been seen, but not yet approached. They sat for a while watching wagon after wagon, family after family, roll inward from the two broad trackways, and none roll outward again. There were more children than adults, and more women than men. They were unarmed, unless one considered their eating knives to be armament, which only an optimist or a desperate man might do. Like herded sheep, they converged in increasing numbers on Vespasian's bridge. It arced across the river, broad enough for a wagon and a horse side by side, high enough for a sea-going vessel to pass underneath, handsome as any sculpture, a testament to the engineers of the legions who could create beauty and utility together. A man could weep for the beauty of it and the inevitability of its loss. Tired of the bridge and its township before the others, Corvus watched instead a haze of smoke on the eastern horizon, and so was first to see the Iceni scouts. Enemy, he said quietly, east of here and north of the scrub oak with the anvil-shaped cloud behind. 15 that I can see, and I will bet there is at least one more. Youths on foot, knives only, war braids and kill feathers. Must braid my hair and put my feather in my hair again. I like that when I look a bit indigenous. Must honour all our ancestors, people of Earth. It's not about what race or colour you are. It's about spirit. They are equal in numbers to us, and most are women. That won't be an accident. They were seasoned men, and they had fought in the west, where for every one of the enemies seen, there were a dozen unseen in the rocks and crannies of the mountains. They did not spin their horses or shout or stare, but talked and bantered amongst themselves, and shifted their mounts a little to lessen their boredom, and eased their blades in their sheaths, for the practice of it until, as if by coincidence, and certainly by chance, they were all facing a little more eastward and could look without seeming to at the place Corvus had described. The scouts rose from their hiding, one by one. They stood half naked among the scrub elder and seeding thistles, wide-legged with their knives in their belts, not deigning to unsheath them in the presence of Rome. They were 16, of whom 8 were women. Once the governors of Britannia had flogged men for suggesting that women fought in the native armies. Now, Suetonius Paulinus, 5th of the governing line, said, "They send us the flower of their youth. They send them to look down on Vespasian's bridge to show that the attack will come with the dawn," said Corvus. "Their gods do not support a battle of which fair warning has not been given. They don't fear that the magistrates and people will rally a defence. Do you see one happening?" They did not. Fighting men know the sounds of panic, and they were issuing now from the port at Vespasian's bridge. Where before had been chaos was now clear panic. On the bridge, the bottleneck became a log jam, and carts broke their axles rather than back up or give way. Figures climbed over them and round them and fell into the water and were ignored by the others who thought that safety lay south. On the river, the ship loading at the wharf was flooded suddenly with men and their families, who abandoned the need to preserve their family's silver and fought each other instead for room on the gangplank and then on the deck. The whistle of the master shrieked loud enough to be heard on the hillside. The men it summoned were armed. Paulinus leaned on the front arch of his saddle. He ran his tongue round his upper teeth thoughtfully, and the 15 men around him found other things to watch rather than catch his eye and so his attention. Twice in his past, once in Mauritania and before that in Parthia, Paulinus had faced a decision and had given the men with him the opportunity to vote on their action. Those who chose wrongly were allowed to fall on their swords before the rest moved on. The ones who hesitated had been staked out and left to die at their leisure. The governor drew his horse to one side. Plebeius, from the beginning Plebeius had ridden at his general's right hand, a one-eyed duplicarius of the 2nd cohort of the 14th. He had a natural head for numbers and was obsessively conscientious. By default, he had become the quartermaster of their small troop and carried the coins and gold they needed for bribes and payment. Wooden-faced, he pushed his horse beyond the hearing of his peers and listened while the governor explained what he wanted. Given his orders, Plebius nodded and searched his packs and emptied what he found into the bowl of his helmet. Metal chimed heavily on metal. Suetonius Paullinus swung his horse on its quarters and faced the semicircle of men he had chosen to accompany him and whose opinions he professed to respect. His face was never expressive, but his eyes, for the most part, on most days, spoke from his soul. Now, in the cold wind that soughed up from the river, they were flat and watchful. He said, "You will each take 1 denarius and 1 as from the helmet." The helmet passed round. Corvus was last. The as was a copper teardrop against the dull iron. He resisted the temptation to bite it and feel the texture of the metal. The denarius was silver and too obviously foiled to be worth the biting. A young, thin Augustus stared moodily east from its one surface. On the other side, a younger, thinner bull stood haltered and garlanded, awaiting the sacrifice. Corvus closed his hand over it. The bull god had never been his. The governor said, 2 choices. We can stay and rally a defence in the township in an effort to preserve the bridge, which is our best route to the south coast, or we can leave now and ride hard for the coast and take ship and return in due course with the legions to face the Iceni war host en masse. Another biting ant. Each of these has points to recommend it. I will not labour them. You will hold out your right hand containing a coin. When I request it, you will open your hand to reveal what is hidden. The silver coin votes to stay and defend the bridge. The copper votes to return to the ship and meet the legions where we may. Is anyone unclear as to which coin denotes which choice? They were not. A man may die cleanly who falls on his sword. Every one of them had faced a worse death daily in battle. Each made his choice alone, as a soldier, as an officer of the legions, as a veteran with 20 years of fighting experience, as a man prepared to live and die by the quality of his tactical judgment. Corvus had made his decision before he saw the scouts. The volume of smoke on the wind told him as much as he needed to know of the size of the advancing war host and the speed with which the port of Vespasian's bridge would be crushed. He placed his 2 hands together, and when he drew them apart, The lighter, smaller, brighter, younger coin was in the right, so light as to barely be there. He looked around. The rest sat easy on their horses and held out their closed fists, so that the governor was ringed by brown skin laced with battle scars. Only Gaius, the scout, looked uncertain. He could not have missed out on the story of Suetonius Paulinus and the doomed officers of Parthia, but he did not have the years of service to tell him that the only possible answer he could give was the one that military sense dictated. To survive, he had to make the decision as if he led a legion or a full army. Only then would he command Paulinus's respect. What killed men, what caused them to forfeit their honour and their lives, in the governor's eyes was sycophancy, or an attempt to buy an ovation from the Senate at the expense of winning the war. They waited because Gaius could not decide. The veins on his temples bet blue and matte with sweat. His skin was as yellow as his hair. He made a decision and unmade it, and for that alone he faced death and knew it. A watery sun shone on them, making the day hot. In the flowering elder behind, a thrush called. The scouts of the Iceni sat in the long grass and seeded nettles through which they had crawled forward and watched with interest. In silence, thick as curdled whey, Gaius thrust his right arm forward into the ring. Reveal yourselves. Corvus felt his arm turn of its own accord and his fingers uncoil. Ursus was on his right. He saw the spark of copper on the grubby palm of the man's hand before he saw his own. The wolf skin had been left behind. He wondered, idly, if that might make them both unlucky. Flavius, on his left, opened his palm a fraction later. He too held copper. Around 14 men held copper tears on their palms. The 15th, bearing silver, was Gaius. The governor's head turned slowly, as an owl's does, without blinking. You think Vespasian's bridge can be fortified? He asked. Gaius was not a coward. I think the people can be rallied. His voice was commendably strong. Get off your horse. He did so. Kneel. He did so. I promised you citizenship, and now I grant it. You are Gaius Fortunatus, citizen of Rome and auxiliary officer of the legions in the rank of decurion. Your pay is 1 sestertius per day. You have been paid in advance. You will earn it. The man blinked in the poor light. How? By rallying a defence against the people of Vespasian's bridge. How else? You will go there now and hold it or die in its defence. If I hear you have fled, I will have you named traitor throughout the empire, and your family will pay for it. Am I clear? You are. There are worse ways to die, and citizenship passed through the male line, unless it was revoked. Gaius turned to look down at the place in which he would die, and it seemed to Corvus that the smile that flowered on his face was genuine. He saluted up to the sun and across the river's water, and spoke to them in a tongue that had not the least trace of the Tiber in its accent. They watched him ride down. The Iceni stood at his passing as if they had some idea of what had taken place. That monster mouthing destiny to me at that last gig after humiliating me has no fucking idea. None at all. Mama T has spoken. They watched him ride down. The Iceni stood at his passing, as if they had, I've read that, some idea of what had taken place. They know a dead man walking when they see one, people of Earth. The governor turned first and sought out Flavius, who had care of the pigeons, and the centurion of the 20th, who acted as his scribe and dictated a brief message to be sent to Agricola, and Galenius of the 14th, who commanded at Mona. Flavius's care of the birds was of a man with a new horse. He held them gently between careful palms and made sure the message carriers on their legs were firm and would not chafe. Pardon me. He spoke to them in words no one else could hear, so that they bobbed at him, bright-eyed and ready. He threw them up high, and they were waiting for the lift he gave them, and spread their wings and cracked the air and rose and flew straight, one after the other, until 4 of the 6 were gone. The governor saluted them, as he would have done a legate leading a legion to a distant battle. If the dreamers set falcons on them, I will have them all crucified. You talking, Kermy boy? my talking boy. They rode west, fast. No one felt the need to point out that their guide had just been sent to his death. They were all good trackers in their way and could retrace any path they had taken once. The Iceni scouts put up a war cry as they left, a long, ululating howl that echoed from one to the other, and lasted long after they were out of sight. Later, as the sun reached over their heads and sank towards the west and the sea that they were seeking, Paulinus pulled his horse back alongside Corvus's black colt. "You understand the native tongues better than most. What was it he said to the sun and the river before he rode down to Vespasian's bridge?" "Gaius?" He was speaking in the tongue of their ancestors. He commended his life and that of his 3 sons to Lu of the shining spear, god of the sun. In the days when the gods were young, Lu felt the thirst of eternal fire and came to earth to quench it. He drank the great river dry and then laid his head down to sleep. My 2 crow friends are here, Mr. Crow and Mrs. Crow. Nemain and Manannan together sent rain, and the river swelled to flooding, but would not touch the god. "Yes, that's for you. Yes, you can have some if you like. I know you prefer chicken. I put some chicken skin out for you, but I don't know if you got it. Some other birds have taken it." He's walking down the path and his whole tail's swishing backwards and forwards as he walks. It's a really beautiful bird. They're both beautiful birds. Sorry, let's get back to the story. Nemain and Manannan together sent rain, and the rivers swelled to flooding, but would not touch the god. It curved round to leave him sleeping and dry. And so the river is sacred, and the place where it bends, where Vespasian built his bridge, especially so. It is. They would never have built a bridge there, and they do not name it after a Roman general. In the native tongue, it is named after the god who first made it sacred. In the tongue of its ancestors, it is Ludunum. The single standing elder by the jetty on Mona was in full flower. A cascade of creamy white frothed and bobbed on the breeze that rose from the sea. Granny picked a half head and teased out single flowers and ate them, dusting the pollen on her tunic so that green became green gold in smudges. Shuffling forward, she dangled her legs over the edge of the oak and felt the biggest of the waves slide up to kiss the soles of her feet. The tide was at its highest, covering what was left of the debris of battle. A warrior walked with a hound whelp at heel along the tide line. Watching them, Granny found she missed Stone for the first time since she had left him to take care of her mother. She watched his shadow lengthen and slide across the rocks at the base of the jetty, and made a bet with herself as to which of three people it might belong to, which meant she could not turn round early to look. "May I join you?" She lost the bet. Of course. She edged sideways, just enough to be polite, and Luann McCalma, elder dreamer of Mona, hitched up his tunic and came to sit beside her, dangling his long, lean legs over the edge and into the water. "Who did you think I was? Hawk or maybe Bellos, except you were not quite as quiet as either of them. So then I thought maybe Ephnus had come back from Hibernia. If I had been asked, I would have said him. He is back. I could get him for you if you want." "Not especially. Have you come to watch the legions leave? They have been striking camp since the tide turned. Maybe Manannan sent the big tide to scare them off." "I think it has more to do with the governor's messenger pigeon that evaded the cliff falcons and returned to its roost at mid-morning." McCalma made a hammock of his fingers and hooked it over the back of his head, stretching his arms. His shoulder joints cracked, scaring some wading birds out on the strand. "Your mother's war host has set a light to the east and south," he said. "I think the destruction of Mona is no longer the governor's first care." "Why are you reciting the Aramaic prayer for the dead, Spirit? No one I know has died. I received no news of anyone's death anyway." He's repeating it. Yitkadal v'yitkadash Rabba. Then I guess news is imminent. But there are many forms of death, not just the physical, so news will come to me at the appointed time. The day became suddenly cold. Grain pulled her knees to her chest. Forgive. To forgive, I need a sincere, authentic, verifiable, unconditional, righteous apology in public, in front of everyone. Yes, I am a bit stubborn about that. Does not pay one to fuck with me when I came in clean and clear. Also, if I forgive, it doesn't actually change anything. Most times when I have been Judeo-Christian enough to forgive, not that I'm a Christian, barely a Jew anymore to be honest, that forgiveness was used as an excuse for continuing bad behaviour. So the Mamatees are very discerning about who and what behaviours she forgives now. It is what it is, people of Earth. A lifetime of hell will make you a bit stoic like that. Right, where were we? I need another drink of water, I think. Another drink of water and a spritz, boys. The story's nearly over today, so we'll carry on. The day became suddenly cold. A granny pulled her knees to her chest and her tunic to her toes. Wrapping her arms round her shins, she said, "Is Mother healed? Her healing has begun." "Yes." He left room for her to ask a question. Grain discovered a wedge of dirt between her toes and rubbed at it with her forefinger. "Did you make the falcons leave the pigeons?" she asked. "No, we couldn't do that, but we offered them 2 of the laying pullets to feed their young, and they did not hunt on the day it came through. The gods may grant what we ask, but sometimes we must act as our wisdom dictates, and hope that is enough." Mackarma's voice had not changed that Granny could notice, but they were no longer talking of falcons and Roman pigeons. He said, "Bellis tells me you have been dreaming." Grain said, "Not proper dreams. There was no purpose to them. I didn't know I was dreaming. I couldn't ask anything except of the hares. There had been 2 hares in her dream. They had each given an opposite answer." She had not told Bellis that, or the nature of her question. "Thank you." Mackarma lay back and hooked his hands behind his head. Grain said, "Will the people come back here to Mona now the legions have gone?" "I think so. We might see what happens in the south first." "Will there be another battle?" "I hope not. The legions will win if there is." Mackarma turned his head to look at her. Grain realised with shock that he was exhausted, as if he had fought the battle already and alone. She had never seen him less than resilient and always good-humoured. He saw her look and smiled wryly in the way Valerius did when he was uncomfortable. He took a breath to say something and changed his mind and said instead, "Grain, will you go to your mother? I think it will make a difference to what happens when they come to fight the legions." "Because I am the wild piece on the board of the warriors' dance?" She hated that. She had no idea what to do about it. "I'm afraid so, yes, but only in part. The rest is because the Boadicea needs you to be whole, and because you need her to be whole, and each of you needs the other to find that wholeness. Mona has done all it can for you. You can dream a little, and you can reach into the fire. It's as much as anyone might have asked for when you came." It was not what Granny wanted to hear. Her eyes burned, because anger was better than yet more grief, particularly in this company. She said caustically, "And I can fight. Hawk has taught me. Don't forget that." He had taught her every morning for 9 mornings while they watched the legions gather and plan their final assault, and plan and plan and never yet launch it. She was better than she had been, but she would never be more than a liability on a battlefield. She watched Luann Mac Karma make very certain that there was no condescension on his face or in his voice when he said, "Yes, and you can fight." He reached into his belt pouch and brought out a small silver brooch shaped like a hair. The design was not new. The lines were carved on beams in the great house and stretched back for 13 generations. She had counted them once. She thought the brooch itself might be new, or at least had not yet been worn by anyone. He said, "If I gave you this and promised that it would join you to Mona as long as there is a Mona to which you may be joined, would you leave here and take it with you and go to your mother wherever she is? Your honour guard will go with you, and Belus too, I think, and perhaps Ephes if he feels he is not needed here." "Why are you smiling?" Granny stood, shaking her head. The thought of Hawk and Dubornos and Gunnar as her honour guard was either hilarious or very sad. She did not wish to think too closely which. She would have gone anyway, without the silver or the 2 wounded dreamers, but she took the hair as he offered it, and pinned it to her tunic on her left shoulder. It ran there as hairs had done in her dream, and still did not give her an answer. And thus concludes chapter 31, and I shall be back tomorrow, no doubt, as the followers of Islam say, Inshallah, and in Judaism we say, Be'ezrat Hashem, by the will of God. We start tomorrow chapter 32, and it will be part 4, mid-late summer AD 60. So I hope you enjoyed that, people of Earth, those with pure and honouring and good and righteous and holy convocations, invocations and intentions towards me that come to my channel. Goddess bless you and me, and may you have a beautiful Sunday, the rest of Sunday anyway. And yes, the kookaburras laughing. Indeed, we're right, the weather is on the turn, and not sure if it's going to start raining in a few hours or tomorrow, but out in the east it's looking very hazy. So yes, as I said, wherever you are in the space-time continuum, have a beautiful day. Walk in light, walk in truth, walk in honour. And remember, as always, to never ever let the bastards grind us down. Bye for now.